Hello and welcome to Amethyst Star Crafting. My name is Jane Allmark and I'm a UK independent Stampin' Up demonstrator. And today we're looking at the Golden Honey Speciality Designer Series paper, which is free during celebration with a qualifying order. And I was saying that it's a very pretty paper, but if you haven't got the honeybee, it can look a little bit stark, very classical, but on a card, I wanted to do something different with it. So we were working on the other day with one of the other sheets, which is this one here. And we've done a couple of things with that one. And now we're going to look at this one. So this side. The other side of it is just a sort of a check. And on this side, you've got the gold embossing on the black. But I thought that we could jazz it up a little bit and make it a little bit more interesting. So I have already just cut myself a piece. You can cut it whatever size you want. I have cut it so that it will have a small 1/4 inch black mat and go onto the card base. So if you do your increments down, whatever your card base is, wherever you are in the world, 1/4 inch down for your black mat, 1/4 inch down for your designer series paper. And mine measures, this measures 3 1/4 inches by 3.5 inches by 5 1/4. So we're going to put it down here. What we're going to use is some Versamark. We need our embossing buddy, and we're going to use some white embossing powder, and we are going to take the little tiny flower from the Thoughtful Blooms, again another celebration set, and it's this little flower there. So I thought that I would show you ones using the celebration, because celebration's been going on now for a couple of months. We're into our last month, and so most of us will have got a few, and it's making the most of those. Now I'm putting this so that the flower goes, I want it to be quite uniform, so I want the flower, the top of the flower, to be at the top of where I'm going to stamp. And I'm just going to take my embossing buddy to start off with and just go over the surface. Okay, because it helps to take off the little sort of sticky bits that we have on our fingers and static. Whoops, that wasn't very good. Didn't stick that on very well, did I? Hold on, let's stick this on properly. There we go. Right. So we then need to just ink it up well in the Versamark, and we are going to stamp in the centre of each one of these. So I'm trying to do it with my lights and not too much of a woggle. And I'm not sure how straight I'm going to get this with my lights, but you will be able to get it hopefully a little bit straighter than I am. And we're just working down. Now you probably can't see this, I can quite clearly, but we're going into the centre of each one of these little hexagons, but only the full ones. If they're sort of part ones, I'm just ignoring those. But fairly sort of quickly, just sort of work your way down, inking up each time with the Versamark. It's exactly the same as ink, but it's clear. So I'm sure I haven't got that over the top of them. So I should have probably done a smaller piece as this example, but you can always fast forward these bits. So we're literally just going through, but it doesn't take a huge amount of time, because all we're doing is just stamping in the centre like this, or not quite in the centre, and then I'm just going to turn it round a bit actually, so that I can do it from the other side, because then that's going to make it. No, I'm not. I'm going to do it from here because it is easier for me to do it down on here. I'm trying not to get my fingers in too much onto the versa mark, because or onto rather where I've used the embossing powder, because your fingers will leave little marks and things and will pick up the embossing powder, so you have to be just a little bit careful with that. But as I say, just stamp your way down. Now you could use craft ink for this. You could use any coloured embossing powder you want. I will show you a few examples at the end of other ideas that I've thought for this, but this is probably one of the quickest ones to show you, because literally all we're doing is stamping into the centre of each one of these. Oops, missing my pad completely. And this is the last line. So I'm only doing the whole ones. I'm not doing the ones that are sort of half, because I don't think that that will matter. Okay, so once we've done that, we can then take our, move that out of the way. Now you can put it in a box, or put your embossing powder rather in a box and use a spoon and things. But if you haven't got a huge amount of embossing powder, just take a sheet of copy paper, fold it in half, so you've then got a nice ridge, and then you can collect all your pieces. So I'm just going to sprinkle the white embossing powder just over the top of the whole area, just covering it. Okay, I've got little bits of something in there, but never mind. Okay, so I'm going to empty the whole lot on here. It really doesn't matter, because we're not going to be wasting it. Now, you can use tweezers and things if you're doing a whole sheet. I'm not. I'm just going to do it and just take it off and make sure that I haven't got any right on the edges. You see here, if I've got little pieces on the edges, you can just take them off. You can take them off with a little brush, or I'm just taking them off with my fingers just on there, because there's only some tiny little pieces. And there, that should be fine. Okay, and the bits that you've got over, if you folded your paper in half like this, you see, you can collect them up quite neatly and then pour them straight back into your jar. And you can see you use very little embossing powder. So it lasts and lasts and lasts and lasts. I've had this jar probably, oh, I don't know, probably about a year, I suppose. And I've only used about half of it. So it does last a long time. And you can get them in all different colours as well. So this is the one that we're doing in the white. So let me just put this down here. Now, what I take is something to hold it down with. So it really doesn't matter what you want to use. But we need to take our heat gun, which is going to make a little bit of a noise, but I always warm it up first. It's quite important to warm it first, because then it is ready to use and it stops the paper or cardstock or whatever you're using, it stops it from warping. And then when you actually put your heat tool on, try not to move it around too much. You'll see it start to change almost immediately, but don't go wafting it about. Just take it onto each piece and just move it across slowly, and you'll see it all changes. Now, as I say, you can do this in whatever embossing powder you want. You can actually colour the white in afterwards as well. And you can see where I've done it. Some of them aren't exactly in the centre, some of them are a bit down and a bit up. The whole effect, it really doesn't make a huge amount of difference. But when you're doing it, you're obviously going to be able to see a little better than I can with camera and camera light right above my head. So just make sure that it's all covered in like that. And you have now taken your designer series paper from being fairly ordinary into something that looks very pretty. Now I chose the white because what I would do is put it onto a black mat like that, and then put it onto a white card base like that, because then you've got the white will pick up the back of this. So I'm not going to finish a card today for you. I just wanted to show you the idea and the designs of how to just zhuzh up your designer series paper a little bit. So that one's done with the little white flowers. What I would suggest is choose something that is going to give you something inside those little squares. Now I'll show you one that I did. This is one that I did exactly the same, but I had a scrap over and I did it in the gold. So again, by mounting that on, I mounted it on one of the stitched rectangles. Then I mounted it on a little piece of white and a little piece of black. So this would actually work quite nicely if I took it at the bottom of a card like this, and then maybe took, if I take the other side of this paper just to show you as the example, other side of the paper, mat it all. In fact, let's mat this way. Okay, so if you mat it that way, or do it the same size as your sheet, depending how you're cutting your papers down, then put this piece at the bottom. You then have another nice piece to fill in with a few little bits and pieces in. But this is another way of difference between having white or having it with gold. So that's two ways of doing it. Then the third way is by using dies. So we have quite a few, and have a look through the catalogue and see, but we have quite a few tiny little dies. So these dies were taken from, and I've left that space because I'm going to put a sentiment down at the bottom, which I've just gold embossed. And again, this will look just beautiful on a black card base or any card base you want. And this was taken from, or using the dies from, the Butterfly Beauty Thinlet dies. And the nice thing about this one is, what I wanted to do was to not spend hours and hours die cutting. So we are really lucky that a lot of the dies, so these are the tiny ones that I used, and there are actually 12 of them. So I was able to put them all onto one scrap of cardstock and then just cut them out. So I had a little scrap of Melon Mambo, and I had a slightly larger scrap of the blue, the Coastal Cabana. I always try and say Calypso Coral, Coastal Cabana. So I did that in that one. And again, just literally put a blob of wet glue in the center of each one of the little hexagons and then put the butterflies in. And I only put some of the Melon Mambo because I didn't have as many, but it just makes it look very pretty. So again, you can use all types of different dies, any of your little scraps that you've got, and just make the paper just a little bit brighter. So if you look at the paper as it was, which is like, let me take out the bigger sheet. Okay, so this is how the paper looks, which it is very pretty, beautiful for making boxes and things like that, but it can look a little bit drab on just on the cardstock on its own for a card. So you can see, brighten it up this way, this one done with the gold, and this one done with the white. So just some simple ideas for you to brighten up your designer series paper. And as I say, I will probably come back and do a video. Well, I don't know whether I will, because I don't know whether I'll have time, but you can obviously finish them however you want. In fact, you could even put that and have them part black and part white. Would actually look quite nice. However you want to finish it, you know, you can take this piece. I was just like looking at the little pieces that I cut off. So you could take this piece on here, and these are just two tiny little edge pieces that I've cut. So you could actually put that in the center, put that on. I know these aren't the right size, but you can sort of get the idea of just again making something very sort of classic and simple in there. But some ideas for you. So thank you so much for watching me. Do look forward to seeing you again. Bye bye.